Dear Diary.
Dear Diary.
Dear Diary, wow, today was a really hard day.
Dear Diary, I find sometimes my life can be hard.
Dear Diary, it will pass and it will be okay.
Dear Diary, I feel like today is going to be...
Shh, the Indigo Diaries. Dear Diary, welcome world to the Indigo Diaries. First, let me introduce myself. I'm back to series 1, The World Through Your Eyes, with me, Natasha Hickling. The Indigo Diaries is a podcast for those who want to learn about ADHD through others' experiences. Thank you everyone for coming in and listening. And if this is your first time, then welcome. And if you're returning, then welcome back. Just a reminder that you'll be getting a lot more guests in this series, and I cannot wait. So I'm just going to go straight in today, because sometimes I babble a bit and then I go off and then I go off. So I'm going to get straight into this guest. This guest reached out to me through LinkedIn, and I'm very honoured to have her and another fellow Brit here today. And one of the things I was really intrigued and inspired me about this guest was her passion to advocate for older adults when it comes to getting diagnosis. And I couldn't be more proud she's chosen my platform to share her story. So let's get started. Welcome, Helen.
Oh, thank you, Natasha. Very happy to be here and honoured that you've invited you've let me come on your show.
You're good. So let me tell you a bit about Helen. Helen is a coach and used to be a teacher. She realised this year that she had ADHD at the age of 58. It was a shock, but a revelation. And she wants to focus on herself first and then reach out to others like herself to help. And if you want the full bio, please look in the description below. So Helen, I always ask this question. When did ADHD come into your life?
Well, I've sort of been aware of it for many years because, as you said, I used to be a teacher, and I was aware of when you get the kids' statements when they've been diagnosed, and you're told, but we weren't really taught anything about it. And our sort of perception of ADHD, or the general perception of ADHD, is hyperactive boys. And we need to give them medication so they can sit still. And that was kind of my understanding of it. And then a few years ago, there was a girl that I was teaching, and it came through that she'd been diagnosed with ADHD. And I was thinking, well, how can she have ADHD? Because she's really quiet and she sits still. And she brought in one day a beautiful piece of art that she'd done. And so I think, they must have got that wrong. And then earlier this year, I was at a very low point in my life. And it was about a month before my 58th birthday. And I was just thinking, why can't I seem to make things work? I mean, I had some success in my business, but I'm thinking what people haven't seen is all the amount of effort and coaching and that I've had to do, all the barriers, the obstacles I've overcome to get that sort of, well, I say success, I suppose it was a success, but, it's not good to compare ourselves to others, but, whereas others are like making 6 figures and things like that. And I'm just thinking, I've had my first sort of year in business where I made 4 figures, and that was a huge breakthrough for me. But I was thinking, why has it been so hard? When I was teaching, it was hard. I struggled with planning and classroom management, and I just thought, I can't do this. I'd always got good grades at school. And then when I went to university, when I was 18, I floundered. And I because now what I understand about executive functioning, that was what I was struggling with. And I didn't know sort of how to organise my time, how to motivate myself to do the assignments, because when you're at school, you've got teachers and parents sort of making you do it. But at university, it's not like that. So I dropped out after a year, and I did go back, and I did when I was in my 30s, and I did my teaching qualification. And that was a struggle when it came to doing my dissertation. I didn't know where to begin. And I was going through a difficult time in my life. I was getting divorced and everything else. So I got through on that with mitigating circumstances. And then when I started teaching, I stayed in a sort of full-time teaching for 3 years, and then I left because during that time I was bullied because I was struggling and I couldn't control my classes, and I'd been asked to plan a scheme of work, and I just didn't know what to do, and I was afraid to ask for help because then I thought, oh, they'll think I'm stupid or something like that. So in the end, it was just too much, and I left. And then, so when I sort of had this sort of, I suppose I've had many breakdowns over the year, but this year in particular, I was thinking, why is this? Why do other people seem to be able to sort of have successful lives, you know, to be functional adults, and I can't? Mm-hmm. And so I, you know, over the years, I've been meditating now for 15, 16 years, and I'm very spiritual. And I just thought, well, I just sort of put it out there to the universe. Why is this? Give me some answers. Yeah. And then I just got, like, you know, download saying ADHD. Okay, I'll be open to this. And of course, then I just started seeing information about it everywhere. And I read Gabor Mate's books, Scattered Brains, because somebody had shared a link to it on Facebook. And I think I devoured that with my wonderful ADHD focus. I devoured that over the weekend. and it was like, as I said, it was like a revelation. It was like, oh, this all makes sense now. This is me. And also, you know, that there was, and that there's an explanation for this. And it's got nothing to do with intelligence, and also, you know, other things that come along with it, like rejection sensitive dysphoria, where, you know, emotional regulation and things like that. Because even though, you know, I've been meditating for many years, and I'm very good at not acting out on my emotions, because I've learned to sort of manage that, but sometimes it's still really hard. And then it sort of it started to make sense. But then, of course, you know, like you said, it's like why I'm passionate about wanting to help older people sort of who are diagnosed after the age of 50, and in particular women, because there is so much then to process. And ever since that was sort of in June, I feel like I've been going through a grieving process of my life, everything I've lost. Like, I lost my house. I sold my house 10 years ago because I couldn't afford to keep up the mortgage payments, and also I couldn't afford to maintain it. And I'd got into debt because I had another business, and I'd lost a lot of money, so I had to pay off my debts. And then realizing that that's also an ADHD thing. They call it the ADHD tax, where because we struggle with our finances. And for me, you know, I'm a maths teacher, so it's not that I can't do numbers and things like that. It was more for me, I was never able to earn enough and to support myself, because I found it hard to hold down a job. In my first sort of early working years, after I left university the first time, I worked in doing accounts and bookkeeping. At some point I did think about becoming an accountant, but then when I read what you had to do and all the law, it was, oh my God, this is so boring. There's no way I could do all that. And so I think in 6 years, I went through 5 different jobs, because as soon as I'd learned how to do the job, I would think, well, my brain wasn't being stimulated anymore. So then I'm moving on looking for something else.
So I want to go back to this revelation. So you said that, thank you for sharing that. And I know it's a lot to kind of come on here and speak so openly. So thank you for that. Thank you for giving the listeners that. And you said about that revelation. So that, I love that, like that day, you just kind of like, this is enough. And then you got that, you know, that sign is ADHD. And you said about a revelation. It was like a revelation for you. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, well, it was just at first, I was just curious, thinking, what's this about, you know? And then obviously seeing the information, and because I'd had this sort of download and then seeing the information, it's like I've learned over the years that when you don't trust your intuition and you don't follow intuition, things usually go horribly wrong.
And they do.
So I'm thinking, right, okay, this is being sort of shown to me, and I need to investigate this and see what's going on. So I think I read 3 books in a week about ADHD. Wow. And I watched loads of videos on YouTube, read loads of articles and things online. It was just like I just wanted to understand how my brain works and how it affects me, and so that was quite an emotional time as well. Lots of crying when I realised this, and thinking, oh my God, you know, this is so true about me. When and in particular with women, about how especially women, they tend to mask their struggles. And that was just so true of me, trying to be a good girl, to fit in and do what society expects, rather than sort of being true to my own needs and my own wishes, and putting those aside.
Okay, yeah, and I it's that thing of when you know you've got that download, or people have that instinct, they've got it, they go through that hyper focus of ADHD, which I think is brilliant, and you just start researching it all. I think so many of us have been through that, where we read so many books, and we're so focused, it's like, how have we ever learned before? Because we're so focused on ADHD. And I know exactly what you mean by masking. I know, because I'm a woman, and many people that I know. And you said that you had to fit in, and you kind of had to. Did you have that experience, and kind of what was that like for you?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, it's probably started when I was at secondary school. Primary school wasn't so bad because, you know, I was born in 1963, which was a baby boom year, and we had a huge class. You know, in primary school there were 40 children.
Wow.
In our class, and it was a mixed school, so there was always lots of activity, lots going on, which was obviously providing me with lots of stimulation that I needed. And I was like the top, you know, academically the top girl in the class, and there was another boy, and who I realized, you know, many years ago, that he was probably on the autistic spectrum, and we were like in competition with each other. So it was like, and that gave me that kind of, you know, the first one to finish, you know, the best one at chess and things like that. So it that kind of gave me that motivation to keep me going. But then when I went to secondary school, I went to an all-girls Church of England grammar school, because it was just the end of the grammar schools before they all became comprehensive. And so that was obviously very different. It was a much smaller class. We were expected to be good girls, to wear the right uniform, to sit still, and conform and behave. And after and I was very small when I was 11, when I went into secondary school, and I was probably about, I don't know, 4'6" and weighed about 5 stone. So I was one of the smallest in the class. And that was, as I realised later, because I also have celiac disease. I got all the family's weird genes.
Me too.
Yeah. So and some of the girls, even at 11, they were almost like fully grown adults. So I was picked on, I was bullied, and because I was a bit weird as well. And so to protect myself, I became the class clown, and realised that if I made them laugh, they would leave me alone, and it was a way of sort of trying to fit in also, you know, with the cool kids and things like that. But of course, that got me into trouble.
Yeah, of course it did, yeah.
For disrupting lessons and things like that. And then your punishment then is often not, you're not allowed to do the things that you love, like acting and being in school plays and things like that, so, where I would have shone. But thankfully, well, in primary school and secondary school, my salvation was music, and I had wonderful music teachers who believed in me, and playing in the orchestra, singing in the choir. That was because I was rubbish at sport, because I'm probably a bit dyspraxic as well, and I've got no coordination, and I'm always bumping into things. So music was kind of what got me through it as well.
Wow, I mean, I know personally I can relate a lot to that, the dyspraxia, the celiac disease, I have that, and the music, because that's what got me through. Yeah, that creative key is so creative. It's always like art or like music or drama that really gets us through places where we can be ourselves, right? So that so after kind of school and kind of that music, what happened after that kind of with the masking? Did it have an after effect like later on in life?
Oh yes, because so when it came to applying for universities, because we never had anybody sit down and talk to us about what we wanted to do. It was almost like expected. It was grammar school, very academic. You go to university, and also, because I do a bit of stand-up comedy now as well, I'm thinking nobody ever said, "Oh, you're really funny, Helen, you could be a comedian." said no teacher ever, apart from me. I have said that to kids that I've taught, and they look at me as if like they can't believe that a teacher would say something like that to them. But anyway, because I wish somebody would have said that to me. So then it's like, well, when it came to applying to university, well, what am I going to do? Well, let's do something sensible that's going to get me a good job, like maths. I mean, I enjoyed maths, don't get me wrong, but really it was, and partly my confidence with music, although I loved it, I never got, I mean, I would have needed higher grades. I played the violin and piano. I got to grade 6, which is pretty good. But, the other kids in the school got to grade 8 because I didn't like practicing, obviously.
Yeah, obviously.
So I thought, well, I'll do maths, because that was, and because this was sort of like the early 80s when computers were starting to become more widely used, and I was thinking maybe that's a good thing to get into. And one of my claims to fame is that my maths teacher at school was Mrs. Berners-Lee, Tim Berners-Lee's mum.
Wow, look at that claim to fame.
So that is my claim to fame. And actually she's quite an inspiring lady in her own right, because she campaigned for equal pay for women. She worked on some of the earliest computers, and so I think maybe I got some of that from her, because I didn't do computer science at school, but she did teach it. And so I thought, well, I'll go. I signed up for a degree in maths and computer science, and my dad was a maths teacher as well, and and that's what his degree was, maths and computer science, and he'd helped me and supported me and believed in me, because I think that's another thing, isn't it, with girls? It's like that, especially people tend to wear that as a badge of honor. Oh, I can't do maths, but I never had that, because of my dad. It's like never an issue. So, but then once I got to university, obviously I didn't have that support, and that was obviously, when I was at school, I sort of managed to kind of wing it. And because even though I used to struggle with writing essays, which was another reason for choosing maths, because you don't have to write essays because of the organisation and the planning. So because when I did my A levels, I got a good grade in maths. In my other 2 A levels, music and geography, I didn't get such good grades because you had to write lots of essays, and that's what I struggled with. And so, but at school, it was like, I was listening to a YouTube video the other day, and he said it's like you go through school and you can kind of coast through school because you cram at the last minute for your exams, but that is not sustainable. It doesn't work when you get to university.
It doesn't work. It's the opposite. It's the
exactly.
Worst thing.
Yeah. And then it was like I got into an abusive marriage, and again this was kind of, you know, I'm trying to hold everything together here with family, and he was, well, because of the way he was, it was like that wasn't enough for him that I was at home looking after our 3 kids. I should be working as well, because why should I be the one out earning all the money while all you're doing is stay at home all day? Yes, okay, yes, because I've got 3 boys. I'm not just lounging around.
You're not just sitting there with legs up on the side.
Yeah. So again, there was that kind of shame that I felt around that. Well, here's an intelligent woman. How did she get into this situation? And where my sort of self-esteem and my self-worth was so low, that you don't want anybody to find out. And so you put a brave face on it and just say, yeah, everything's fine, you know, and that which you present to the world.
Yeah, that everything is fine. I know that more than, how are you doing today, Natasha? Everything's fine. And everyone's like, oh, okay, see you then. And you're like, everything is not fine.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a break now, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about Helen and kind of where Helen went after kind of having that realization, and then kind of what's next for Helen. And I look forward to. So thank you so much for having a delightful first half.
Thank you.
We're out. If you would like any more information on Indigo Hub or our Indigo support group, then please check out our website below, or our link to our social media platforms, or email at indigohub.adhd@gmail.com. If you would like to offer any comments, feedback, get support, or if you're interested in the world hearing your story, then please reach out through any of our avenues. As said before, have a positive week. Check in again later. And we're out.
Shh, the Indigo Diaries.
And we're back. And if you weren't here for the first half, then rewind now, because we just met the lovely Helen and she was telling us all about what happened when she had a realization that it was ADHD. And then we kind of went back and we looked a lot about masking and kind of ADHD in women. And so welcome back, Helen.
Hi, Natasha.
We've just seen each other in the break. We've not just magically appeared here. So tell us a bit about kind of, this is a proper ADHD moment. I forgot my thought. Okay, I've remembered it again now. Tell us a bit what happened after kind of, after having that revelation. You started to talk about a bit about the grief process. And that's something that I know I went through myself. I would love it if you would kind of just tell the listeners a bit about what it was like for you.
Yeah. Well, first of all, one of the things it's really taught me is that it's okay to reach out and ask for support. Because I think, you know, part of that masking thing and like saying, oh, yes, everything's fine, everything's okay, stops you reaching out. And at this point, it's like, okay, it's all right. So I sort of reached out to a couple of my sort of neurodivergent friends, and one of them had been diagnosed with ADHD. It was either the beginning of this year or the end of last year, when she was about 53, I think. And so so I had a chat to her about the process, and she gave me some really good tips. And then I was talking to another friend who found out she was dyslexic, I think when she was in her 30s, and she was a teacher as well, and she now educates people about dyslexia. And again, she was the one who said about the grieving and how she'd had to do that. And so and that was kind of over the last few months, that's been one of the biggest things. It's like, actually, it's been learning to, it's okay to lean on people, and because I've been trying to do it all on my own, and now my kids are all grown up and I live on my own, it's like I'm doing everything anyway. It's hard enough for anybody anyway, but with the ADHD challenges added on, trying to maintain a household and pay all the bills and make enough money and pay them on time and everything else. So and again, like I said about having sort of thinking at my stage in my life, it's like you're kind of brought up to believe in the fairy tale, especially as girls. It's like, oh, by this time my life will be sorted. I would own my own home. My mortgage would be all but paid off. And here I am, renting, credit card debts, and it just. Then I thought I'd hit rock bottom in June, but there was still more to come. It's like it's like, they say it's like peeling off the layers of an onion. You peel off one layer and there's more underneath. And I think for me, it was like taking the lid off a pressure cooker that had been building up over all these years, and suddenly it was like, and I knew I've got to go with this. And I contacted my doctor and I got them to sign me off. I'm registered self-employed, but I didn't know. Again, this was something I learned from a friend of mine. She said, well, you can get the doctors to give you a sick note, even if you're self-employed, and then you can get benefits and stuff like that. And then, of course, there's all the shame you feel around that. Oh, God, somebody like me shouldn't be on benefits.
Yeah.
And realizing how that's also kind of linked to my own sort of worthiness issues.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, I do deserve to receive support, and I deserve to have a home and to be able to afford to put my heating on. And if that money has to come from the government, then so be it. It's like, and sort of talking about the ADHD tax, it's not just people with ADHD that are paying, it's everybody, because it's like it puts pressure on the NHS, let's say, on the benefit service, because people aren't being diagnosed and struggling. And I had problems with my mental health, and really the problems with my mental health are because of living with undiagnosed ADHD, and trying to fit in, and the frustration and the anxiety that I've got to do this. And so the grieving process was, kind of, and I've heard this said by many people, that a lot of people with ADHD always feel like they've never achieved their full potential, and that was kind of and they're underachieved. And I've been saying that for years. I feel like I'm such an underachiever and not understanding why. And so that was sort of coming to terms with that, really, and saying and grieving what could have been if I'd found out when I was younger, and sort of at my age, when I started working, the retirement age for women was 60, and sort of I would have been sort of approaching retirement now and coming to the end of my career, whereas it's like, well, maybe it's just beginning. And also coming to terms with the fact that I might never have a successful job or career, because it's trying to be realistic, because obviously, we with our wonderful ADHD brains, we're very creative, we have lots of ideas, but I have to also be realistic, saying, yeah, you've had lots of ideas in the past, and how's that worked out? It's not worked out that well, so it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work out in the future. And I don't mean to be negative and that kind of thing, but it's also about being realistic. So that it might work out, but also it might not, and that's okay. It doesn't reduce my value as a person, and my value is not linked to how successful I am and my job or my career.
I really like what you said about kind of that self-worth key, and that, asking for help is really hard, and it is really hard, and especially when for so long we felt unworthy, we felt like we don't deserve it. And what was kind of that shift for you? Because it feels like you kind of started asking for help, you started to kind of feel a bit more worthy. I just wondered kind of what was the biggest impact that created that shift?
Well, I think I know it can be a bit of a postcode lottery, but I'm really lucky that my health centre, my GP surgery, do actually take mental health very seriously.
Okay.
Because I was going through some stuff last year and I thought I might be bipolar, but obviously realising it's probably ADHD. And so I knew that I could call them and they would take me seriously, and so putting the steps in place to get a diagnosis, and then lots of other things kind of opened up to me that I didn't know existed. So I've learned about social prescribers, and then she's put me in touch with Mind, and I had to go for an appointment at the job centre, and that was absolutely awful. And so they said, you know, the advocate can come with you from Mind to support you, because I just broke down, and it was just because they're just because I'm registered self-employed, and suddenly all the support that you were getting during the pandemic was gone, and suddenly there's all this pressure on you. Like, oh, you've got to earn money, and how am I going to pay my rent? And suddenly realizing actually that although that was hard, there were people who would listen to me and take me seriously. And of course, my inner critic at the same time is telling me that I'm overreacting and I'm being dramatic, and why you're a privileged white woman, you know, you're just being a baby, and this kind of thing. So it's dealing with all those inner voices as well. And with ADHD, we have a lot of them.
Yeah, and they don't seem to be quiet, do they? Either.
No. And so that was, and they were, you know, really supportive, really kind, and they treat you like a human being. Yeah. And it's like, and again, like I was saying, it's like realizing that, okay, at the moment, maybe I can't work at the moment, or but it doesn't diminish my worth, my value. Yeah. And that's been, and a lot of that is obviously to do with our conditioning when we're brought up. Yeah. You know, that you should get a good job, and because that's often the first question that we ask somebody, don't we? What do you do?
What do you do? What's your job? Yeah.
And so now it's sort of, because I went to a neighbour's housewarming a few weeks ago, and people are asking me, well, what do you do? And I said, well, actually at the moment I'm not doing very much. I'm just taking care of myself, because it's so important that we allow ourselves time to heal. And of course, in this fast-paced world that we live in, that it's almost perceived as selfish to do that. Yes. And you have to have don't worry, you have to have really strong boundaries and be really firm, and with myself as well as with others. And saying, and learning to say no. There's a great meme going around this month, I don't know if you've seen it, saying November. I say no, stop saying yes to everything. And like, you know, we said, especially with ADHD and when we're seeking our dopamine fixes, it's so easy to sort of, oh yeah, I'll do that. And then we just end up getting overloaded and burned out. And that's something I've been learning over the last few months now, understanding about that. And it's like, okay, recognizing when I'm being pulled and saying, hold on, let's take a step back here and say no. And just, you don't have to do anything. Because I met a friend at the weekend she was having a difficult time, and I just said to her, I said, look, you don't have to save the world, because I think as women as well, we tend to take so much on and feel like we have to save everybody, fix everybody's problems. Because I even realised that when I was doing my coaching qualification, about halfway through, I realised part of my motivation for doing that was because I thought that I had to fix on people. So and now, in typical ADHD fashion, I've forgotten what the original question was because I've gone off on a tangent.
It's usually we forget what we're going to say,
Yeah,
or we go on a tangent and then we're like, oh, sorry, what was that? We forget instantly what we're going to say, or we go on a tangent. No, I think that's amazing, and I have to say it's really inspiring. Like in a short time after kind of having that like revelation, and then kind of get into that place where it's like, do you know what? I deserve to live this life. I'm going to take care for me. And the reason why I got so not excited, agreed with you when that selfish thing, because that is a big key. It's like, you're selfish to take care of yourself. And it's like, no one's taken care of you for a long time. I'm going to take, it's such crucial to take care of yourself. And I love that you went to that place and said, no, I'm taking care of myself. And I mean, that just shows that you're unmasking, right? I think that's absolutely incredible, Helen. So Helen, from now, what's next for you, looking after yourself, and now you've got that information going forward?
Yeah, well, there's lots of, obviously, loads of ideas, lots of things I could do and I want to do. One of my big dreams that I'm still holding on to is, and this was kind of something I was thinking about before we had the pandemic and obviously had to put those dreams on ice, was about running retreats, because that's something that's helped me over the years. And what's Thursday today, isn't it? We're recording this. Oh, I've just realised it's 11:11. How amazing! Sorry, I love numbers.
You're all good, I can tell.
Going off on a tangent again. And no, so tomorrow actually I'm going off on retreat for a week, and because as I did mention before, I have been meditating for about 15, 16 years, and I think that all that kind of inner work that I've done over the years has, there's always a reason for everything, why we do stuff. We might not realise it at the time, but that has kind of sort of prepared me for this, I think, to realise that I'm important, I matter, I need to take care of myself, and I've got the tools to do it as well. So, and that, I mean, I volunteer at a retreat centre, which is great because it and I realise why it works so well for me, because one of the other things I love doing is cooking, and that is kind of like a great de-stressor for me because I can be creative and create lovely meals. And I've been cooking at this retreat centre now for about 10 years. I probably spend about a month every year, go about 4 or 5 times a year. And I've realised how well that fits in with my ADHD, because I realised it can be quite challenging, especially for it's a Buddhist retreat centre, for some of the retreat leaders, not all of them, because I found the ones that I work well with now. But they were saying, but how can you fully engage in the retreat if you're cooking as well? Maybe you should go on some retreats where you're not cooking. But that obviously it's like an outlet for me. And I can still be mindful when I'm cooking and put all my love into it. And also I'm away from all my usual distractions of phones and internet and emails and things like that. And I get to meditate a lot as well. And so for me, that kind of provides that perfect balance, that I've got that stimulation, but it's being channeled in a positive way, and it's about being of service. And I also think, I'm reading a book at the moment by a guy called Robert Schwartz, and he used to be, I think, something like a management consultant, and then maybe about 15, 16 years ago, he went through his own kind of awakening, and he did research into soul plans and birth plans, and the idea that that we come to this life because I believe, our soul, that part of us that's eternal, that will carry on after death, comes to earth, to in human form, to learn lessons from our experiences. So and also, even if you don't believe that, it's like in Buddhist terms, they talk about the gap where we have that choice when something happens, whether we're going to react in a conditioned way based on the way that we've always done things, or are we going to take a step back and make a more informed, more skillful choice about how we're going to respond to that. And I think, and especially what I've been through over the last few weeks and with the job centre and stuff, and it's really, really challenged me. And I can see why people, there's been stories in the media of people who've died, when their benefits have been cut, where they committed suicide and things like that. And I can see why people could be pushed over the edge. And I'm thinking, well, because I've been that close myself. And I'm thinking, well, why does this happen to me? And time something like that, these challenges happen to you, it just realised that it enables me to develop more compassion, and for myself and for others. And also, I've started following a lot of disability influencers on Instagram and stuff like that, and an understanding about ableism, and because it was just something that I wasn't really aware of before, maybe in terms of on a very sort of crude level, that that we need ramps so people with wheelchairs can get into buildings and things like that. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. And I don't know if you saw, I saw somebody shared something on Facebook yesterday about, there was a lady on the British Bake Off who had, various neurodiverse, and since she was maybe on the autistic spectrum, ADHD, dyspraxia. And then all these people going, oh, she's so inspirational. And then that kind of stuff makes you want to cringe. And because that's something I've been learning from these influencers, that we're not your inspirational porn, that we just want to be seen as whole human beings living our lives. Yes, we have challenges, but it's almost like, and I realised how much why I hated over the years, because my oldest son has got drug and alcohol problems, and he's, probably on the autistic spectrum, got ADHD as well. And people go, oh, you're so inspiring, and I don't know how you do it. And I was just thinking, well, I don't really have any choice, and I'm not inspiring, because sometimes I want to scream and shout and swear and drink too much and smoke too much, and I'm just a human being. But it's like, okay, yes, I've learnt tools to help me get through it, but I'm not but it's almost like they're coming from a place, well, yeah, you're so inspiring, but thank God my kids don't do drugs, kind of thing. And so I'm getting on my soapbox now. And I just wanted to respond to all these people's comments on this post on the British Bake Off, and just thinking, oh, I just haven't got the energy for that. And I think that's it. It just takes so much energy to stand up for ourselves and saying, yeah, I want to be seen for who I am, and not to be judged, not to be patronised.
I think that's really nice. You said about the treats, because it helps you and things like that. And then you kind of went on to kind of say what's next for you, and kind of ADHD and that thing of, being seen as who you are. We're not some person that you can puppet around. You're right. And people are inspiring, but inspiring for who they are, not for their condition.
Exactly.
And I 100% agree with that. And I really couldn't agree more. So kind of any last thoughts for kind of our listeners today?
Yeah, well, I mentioned before about, that at the moment I'm just taking a bit of a step back, just taking time out for me. And this is something that I learned, or I realised maybe 6 or 7 years ago, because my ex-husband died very suddenly. And that brought up a lot of pain and stuff that I hadn't dealt with at the time of our divorce, because I was busy, looking after the kids, and I'd just done my teaching qualification. So I put myself last. And then that was then I realised that actually, no, I need to take some time out to heal. And so I think I've got it on my website. I say heal yourself and you heal the world, because it's not a selfish thing to do, self-care and to heal. It's a very altruistic thing to do, because it not only benefits us, but it benefits those around us. And it's, as like I said, about learning to becoming more compassionate and kinder, that benefits everybody. Because it's like, even if you're talking to somebody at the bank or something on the phone, and that can be quite frustrating when you're on hold, but just remembering like, oh, the other person's a human being, and if I'm the one person in the day who's not going to shout at them and have a go at them, show them a bit of kindness, that is going to make a difference to them, and then to the people that they come into contact with. And it was the same when I was teaching. It's like, instead of punishing the kids, I never wanted to put them in detentions and things like that. I just, especially the kids that were struggling and the kids with additional needs and things, it's like I just wanted to smother them with love. And I was just thinking, well, when I worked as a supply teacher for many years, or substitute teacher, I would just say, when I go to work today, if all I do is make a difference in the life of one child, I've done a good job. And I think it's about, like I said to my friend at the weekend, we don't have to save the world, but we can just make, it's probably a phrase, isn't it, like your sphere of influence, what you can do in your sphere of influence. And so by working on yourself, by becoming a better, kinder, compassionate person, healing from your past, because they say, these traumas, the things that have happened to us, they're not our fault, but the healing from them is our responsibility. So, it's no good blaming your parents and things like that, because they were doing their best. But it doesn't mean to say if somebody's been unkind to you or whatever, that you have to condone their behaviour. But by forgiving them and healing from that, you're not then going to be passing that on to other people.
Wow. What an end. What an end. Oh my goodness. I need to put the end at the beginning, because that was just amazing. You're so right. And that was a really great way to kind of and leave people with, but also quite a nice way to kind of end kind of like what your story is about, and kind of who you are, and that essence of kind of this episode. And I just want to say thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I love that it's what you do with it now, like that response, what you do with it now is that healing process. And it's very rare to meet people that are very similar to myself, that just want to make a difference in one person's life, because it's the butterfly effect, right? One person, it goes to another, and then it expands like that. And I love that. I think that's really, I'm not going to use the word inspiring. I'm not going to use it. It does absolutely amazing. So where can our listeners find you?
Right, okay. Well, I have a website, healwithhelen.com. There's a bit more about my story there. And I've got a YouTube channel as well, Heal with Helen, where I sort of do lots of guided meditations and share stuff on there as well.
Nice. So if you want to get in contact with Helen, please look at the bio below, and all the information of how you can contact Helen will be on there. And like she says, heal with Helen. And I really love that. I think the word of the day is heal. Heal yourself, heal the world. I love that. So thank you so much, Helen. I really appreciated you coming on today.
Oh, thank you for having me, Natasha. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks so much.
So yet again, we leave, I'm not going to use the word inspirational, with another just incredible diary, and someone that you might be able to relate to in many ways, because like I said, I could relate in many ways. I mean, Helen are probably worlds apart. We are literally on the other side of the world, but we're, we've got lots of different experiences, but there's so much we can relate to. And I just want to say, as we finish today's episode, please reach out if you want to share your story with others, because it can make a big difference, not only in your life, but also in other people's. Look out next week as we either launch a new episode of series 1 or 3. And so signing out, and look after yourself. Do what Helen says. Look after yourself before looking after others. Heal yourself first. And we're out.
Dear diary.
Dear diary.
Dear diary.
Today is ending. I'll check in again tomorrow.
Tomorrow is a brand new beginning.
Good night, sweet dreams.
I think tomorrow will be.
Shh.